Hello, welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Jordan Kurtz. I'm a hypnotherapist. And today on my live stream, we are going to be talking about... Nope, gotta mute myself. Still new at this. Jeez. Oh. Okay. Hopefully there's no feedback now. Oh, still getting the kinks worked out. But it's all good. Today I'm talking about Pearl Davis, and she has an interview with a therapist. The video is called Pearl Goes to Therapy. Double checking this individual's name is David. What is it? David Sutcliffe. It looks like he is a YouTuber who has interviewed people like Pearl and Andrew Tate. And the reason I wanted to do this show is I haven't actually watched the full thing. I watched like the beginning of it, and I started watching intermittent pieces of it. And I wanted to just provide probably part one, because it's pretty long. It's about an hour-long video. We'll see if I do part two. But I find that I would like to provide some insight into the subconscious programs that I see David probing for into Pearl. So this isn't really a takedown video. It's more of a outside observer watching this therapist interact with another person and kind of breaking down how I view their body language, sort of their phrasing, sort of, when they get kind of uncomfortable, and, so watching some of the mirroring that's going on. And because, when I'm working with clients, when I'm working with prospective clients, I notice, I'm looking for certain phrases, I'm looking for certain ways they describe themselves. And I will even ask certain probing questions myself to get to the root causes of the issues they're trying to fix with me. And part of the goal of this channel is to help describe this subconscious speak that people use. And when we boil their subconscious programs down to I'm not good enough for other people, I can't get what I want, I have anger and resentment, and I don't feel safe. Those are the big five, shout out Ryan Fowler, big five subconscious programs that most people tend to struggle with. I look through the world through that lens, and it's very clear to see, and so I'd like to share a little bit of that, and I think this interview provides a good good content to provide so that I can kind of break down how I think about these things when I'm watching them. Because I found myself when I was watching this clip that I'll pull up here in a minute that I ended up just almost talking to myself. I was like, well, this and this and this. And I found myself, I was like, okay, this is an excellent topic to cover on my live stream, because my initial reactions, my first reactions, seem to be pretty good. And I think that I can provide some valuable insight into. And so if anyone else, if you're interested in looking at the world through this way, or you just find this interesting, that's what I'm here to provide for you today. So let's get into it. Okay. And I'm going to go presenting. All right, getting better at this too. And let's go ahead. It just jumps right into it. So, and I remembered I need to unmute the desktop audio this time.
That when I just feel
okay. Hey, I got it right last week. There's progress. I remembered I had to unmute. I don't know BS. Okay, let's get into it.
I want to know you more. Just feel that just feel when I say that though,
trying
Pearl.
to think of something.
But don't think.
Okay.
Just see what happens when I say I want to know you more. And what happens?
Look at that, the blank expression. I'm not really sure what he's getting at by this. I want to know you more. It seems a very. I think what he's trying to do there is he's trying to take whatever response he get. Like he's not really. Well, I think he's doing two things. One, he's trying to see how she reacts to that comment, and two, he's trying to see what she says. Like, what's her first instinct to kind of bring up about herself. And so that blank expression I think Pearl had was her kind of analyzing the question. Like, kind of like, what do you mean by that? I mean, and to be fair, I think I might have a similar expression. We say, I want to get to know you more. I mean, my first question might be, what do you want to know? Like, I might just turn it back on them.
I was trying to think of something to say.
Don't think. Can you get out of your mind for a second?
Yeah.
Yeah, and just feel.
Mm-hmm.
And when I say that I want to know you more, just notice what happens.
I have a bit of a problem with this, like, get out of your mind and just feel. It's not very helpful, I find. It's very, if you're not used to kind of connecting with your feelings, there's an air of like condescension, I think, around it. And so, if it, like, I'm trying to describe it. Like you need to be kind of trained to understand what your feelings are like. He's like, don't think, just feel. It's kind of feel good, but I think that's some of the reasons why people don't like therapy is because they don't know how to connect to these feelings. They don't know what they are. And so, if you talk to me one-on-one, I would never say a question like that. I mean, at least not with a lot of context around it. And so, I might, typically when people come to me, it's because they already know they're feeling they're struggling with procrastination or anxiety or anger and resentment. They feel something already. And so I kind of lead them down like, okay, when do you feel when do you not feel this? When do you feel this? And so, I mean, those kind of generic questions, I'm not going to ask you that. If you come work with me, you don't have to worry about me asking you these kind of, I don't want to call it a gotcha question, but yeah, I don't really know where he's going with this. And so I again, these seem like probing questions. I mean, look, if you look at his face, he's looking at her very intently. He's making direct eye contact, and she's kind of, backing up in her chair. You see her face kind of go down. She's kind of, she's doing this kind of with her body. She's kind of backing up, and so I think she's getting uncomfortable. And but again, I'm not really sure the purpose of this. Maybe it'll become clear as I play more.
What happens?
Nothing.
Nothing?
Sorry, I don't know. So I think it's really...
Okay, to be fair, that was the intro, so maybe there will be more context around it. But I think everything I said is still valid.
Wrong to deprive children of that. And I think it's wrong to deprive men of being fathers to their kids.
And this interview, Pearl is, a Red Pill content creator. And so I'm not so much interested in the content of what she's saying. The purpose of that break, I'm not really breaking down that element. I'm more interested in because this guy is a therapist, and so I'm more interested in the sort of the meta-analysis of how he responds to the things that she says. And so I might speed things up, slow things down occasionally.
Why are you so passionate about this? Because, we were talking about it before we went live, and you have all of this fire.
Yeah.
around it, which is great. I love it. And I agree with most of what you say. I mean, and all of what you say essentially in principle. And I'm glad that you're taking up the cause, but do you know why you're so passionate about this?
And I think, again, since I'm looking at this through sort of a therapy lens, that he's like, do you know why? And that's sort of a... maybe I'm biased because of the name of the video is Pearl Goes to Therapy, but he's like, why are you so passionate about this? There might be a bit of an implication that, what what trauma or issues in your past have led you down this path. I'm not making a judgment about that. I'm more saying I get the sense that that's kind of where he's going and is going to go with this. Again, and because it's not a typical interview, because it's named Pearl Goes to Therapy, it's not a standard interview, so I assume that that's where he's going to lead this.
I think it just changed me when I interviewed men who were like a mile from their kids and hadn't seen them in 3 years. Like I had to stop doing so many interviews of divorced men because it would seriously depress me. It was so sad. Like it would be like fathers and it's not the players. It's not like the deadbeat dads that they paint like fathers that are not in their kids' lives. The most common trope I got was a guy that wanted to be a traditional father. He wanted to provide. He found a chick. He liked the chick. He married the chick. He had a normal job. And then, she puts an abuse claim out. It's never followed up by the police. A lot of times during COVID, it would get pushed off the trial for it.
Mm-hmm.
And so by the time he got to court, she had the primary care of the children, and that was what they based custody off of.
Right.
So it's like you meet these dads who it's like they don't care about the money. They just want to see their kids.
Yeah.
And it's been 2 years, 3 years since they've seen their kids, or they get them every other week. Like one guy that we didn't actually release this because his case was like that he ended up wanting to not, his daughter was in the house with a pedophile. He couldn't do anything.
His daughter was in the house with a pedophile?
See, she didn't really answer the question. It was more, how did you get into this? What made you passionate about it? And she kind of, and she might go into it later, but she kind of deflected the answer. She kind of started talking about the things she was doing after she was already passionate about it. Doesn't seem like, I don't know if he's going to press her on it. And so I think he's going to start to circle back and go, well, why? He's going to keep asking that. He's going to lead it down to kind of like a childhood exploration.
Your boyfriend was a pedophile and he couldn't do anything about it?
Couldn't do anything about it.
Because the court systems favor women because they believe that children are better off with their mothers generally. Although the data doesn't suggest that.
Not at all. But women are the most likely ones to abuse children.
Right. But I mean, I've heard you say this before, and I've heard the pushback is, well, they're around the children more.
But if that was I looked into that, and if that were the case, if it was based on the time that the mother spent with the kids, women are spending less time with children, but abuse is going up. So that doesn't make sense. But that's what I mean.
But either way, women are hitting and abusing their children. That's for sure.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah, we don't like to talk about it.
And if the man, because what they'll do is this is what I mean when they, like, the academics find the craziest ways to like move stats. If you look at, because they'll say, oh, well, it's close, men and women. Well, who are the men abusing the kids? The freaking stepdads. So if the dad abuses the kid, it's most likely a stepfather. Yeah, yep.
No, I've heard that too. It's so disturbing. I had a stepdad. He wasn't abusive, but he did when my mom left him.
Yeah.
And he was he was in the picture. He took over, and when my mom left him, he completely abandoned me. And when I went through all my therapy, that was actually the deepest wounding, that a man had just completely betrayed me. So yeah. Anyway, stepdads. The abuse is coming from the stepdads.
Yeah. So it's like, I don't know. You do these interviews, and it's like you see a guy in front of you, and all he wants is to see his kids. Some of them are homeless. Some of them are ex-veterans, and some of them, in the next year, if they committed suicide, I wouldn't be surprised. And a lot of them do. And I just think it's so wrong.
But your heart opens up to these men. Like, you care about it because there's a lot of causes that you could care about. There's a lot of injustice in the world.
Now he starts to sort of move the conversation. It's like your heart opens up to these. So now he's sort of, they had that, they talked about a specific issue. Now he's sort of circling a bit back to her as an individual rather than the issues.
Why this one? Do you know?
I don't know. I do love my dad a lot.
Again, he's asked that question twice now. He's like, why this? Why this? And she says, okay, well, I learned all this other stuff, but like, that's not really an answer.
I always talk about him, but I don't even think that's it, because I mean, my parents are still together, but
What's their relationship like?
they're still married. They've been
Are they happy?
yeah, I think so.
And then, okay, so that's the first particularly personal question he asks, and he says, okay, so what are your parents like, and background, we get most of our subconscious programs from childhood, and most of them are ingrained based on our relationships and our experiences with our parents. Our parents are basically gods, and so whether or not we have a good or poor relationship with our parents is ultimately determines most of the subconscious programs. So, that's why therapists almost always seem to go to, including myself, to be fair. I'm not excluding myself from that. But, I go to, what were your parents like? What was your relationship with your mom like? What was your relationship with your dad like? Did you have, step parents? But, and so on. So she's going to go on to explain stuff about her dad. And I'm going to slow this down, I think. Slow this back down.
So
You think so?
yeah.
What does that mean?
Well, I mean, like they have
Hang on,
problems.
I want to go back a few seconds.
Like,
They're still married. They've been
are they happy?
yeah, I think so.
You think so?
Again, are they happy? That's another sort of probing question. It's like, again, this is why this is a therapy conversation. It's like I've never talked with anybody in regular conversations, just like, are your parents happy together? It's very specific. And so I think where he's trying to assess is if her red pill views come from her parents. And you can see there the body language, it looks a little bit, she's kind of, shrinking. It seems like she's uncomfortable talking about this. And, he's looking at her again with a lot of direct eye contact, and he seems very intent on asking that question. So, yeah, let's keep going.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Well, I mean, like they have problems.
And what does that mean? That's another common, therapist. Well, what does this mean? What does this mean? What does this mean? And so he's probing to try and figure out, her a little bit. And it's not so much he's trying to figure out her. It's, again, therapy. We like to, there's a saying, it's like all hypnosis is self-hypnosis. And so if that's the case, it's like it's really you understanding yourself better. And so, a good therapist or hypnotherapist is going to ask these kind of pointed questions to try and guide the client that they're working with towards like certain self-discovery or self-actualization. For me, it's that self-actualization discovery is these are what the subconscious programs are that you need to remove from my head, or that we need to, or that I'm going to work with you to remove from my head.
Problems like any married couple, but I mean, they built like a business together, so they would kind of be everything that like the trads would, declare. But
What's their dynamic? Who has the power?
It's kind of another personal question. Like he's asking, like, are they happy? What's their dynamic? He keeps sort of pushing that, and Pearl's trying to give examples. He's like, well, they have that traditional trad thing, but she hasn't really answered the question directly. And so I think that's why he follows up with another, like, who has the power? That's a little more specific of a question to try and probe. And again, she's kind of uncomfortable with that question too.
I think it depends on the day, to be honest. But,
Well, that's a good answer. It's equal.
No, I wouldn't say
Oh, really?
But
Who's got the power?
I don't know. I don't think they'd really want me like talking about their marriage.
Well, but we're talking about.
And again, she might not be uncomfortable because or entirely because of, like, if their parents are good or bad. It might be more like she said, she is not sure if she wants to be talking about their parents publicly, and I understand that, people on the internet can be intense, and so the more you expose, the family, your privacy shrinks. So perhaps some of the uncomfortability is part of that too. And maybe not. Maybe there are ways of her describing certain things that don't involve super private details. I mean, he's asking for pretty intimate details.
How about you?
Yeah. Well,
Your perception.
yeah, but I don't know. I think it depends on.
So again, he's going back to, it's like, so again, there's that subconscious speak word, right, of what's your perception. And so, because, the way, there's a technique in, hypnosis called Gestalt therapy, which basically analyzes how it's basically, we don't really interact with other people. We interact with the model of other people we have in our heads. If we had to relearn, that a lion was a lion every time we encountered one in the wild, we'd probably get eaten a lot more. So it's helpful for the brain to kind of create these models of things rather than the actual things themselves. And so that's why he's asking, what's your perception of it? Because that's really what she's interacting with, is the perception of her parents rather than the parents themselves, and especially if she thinks of them as having a poor relationship, that might affect her in one way or the other, or if she thinks they have a good relationship. So she gets into a little bit of here, I think.
The day, like, that's what I would say.
Okay. What's your mother like?
She's like hardworking, so she's very organized.
So it's interesting. So it's like, this is the part of the interview, because I've seen a little bit of this already, and so he's gonna start, like, he keeps asking these questions of, like, okay, so what's that like? And she says, well, I don't want to expose that, and then she immediately goes and provides more and more details about them, which makes me think she's more uncomfortable with the topic rather than more uncomfortable with, like, she's more uncomfortable with what is going to come out more than the fact that it's being talked about at all. And so she immediately goes to, what is your mom like? And so I think what's going through, what was his name? David. Yeah, David's head is, he's really watching for the answer. He doesn't really care what she says. It's not about the information in and of itself. It's like, what does she prioritize as the most important thing to say? And so, like, I'll be listening to clients talk, and I'll say, okay, well, they'll keep telling me what they think. They'll keep telling me, like, this is how it is. They will, I'm trying to think of a good example. They'll tell me a lot of stories, like, this happened, this happened, this happened, but they won't really tell me the reaction that they had to those things. And so I've had clients where I've had to they'll keep telling me, they'll describe how a certain thing happened or how a certain event in their childhood happened, but they won't actually, but they'll kind of omit how they felt about it. And so I'll have to push them a little bit. And so that is a case where, you remember at the beginning where he's like, feel instead of think. It's like, that's sort of where that question becomes more appropriate, is because, is when a client is sort of circling an idea, but they're not getting to the root. A client is circling the subconscious program, but they're not really describing what it is. And so I might have to draw that out. And I think that's where he's going with this. He's trying to find some, he's really not asking what is her mom actually like. He's trying to analyze, like his previous question said, what is Pearl's perception of what her mother is like. Because those are two different things. What she's actually like and what Pearl thinks she's like is different. And so he's watching for the descriptive, the adjectives that that Pearl uses to describe her mom.
Hardworking chick.
Are you close?
Not super close with my mom, but it's not like we like hate each other. It's just not like overly close, I guess.
How is that? You're not close with your mother?
It's all right, you know.
It's all right?
Yeah, it's all right.
Again, the body language, you know, again, it's the backing up and kind of, you know, that. I think that makes her feel uncomfortable. I mean, it's very clear from the body language, something about that is making her uncomfortable. Well, whether it's she wants to reveal what it is, whether it's whether the thing that's making her, I don't know. I'll back up. I don't know whether or not the thing that's making her uncomfortable here is the fact that she's on camera and talking about this in front of what she knows is going to be, well, the internet. Or if it's the actual, like, even if you turn the cameras off and you have the same conversation, is this how her body language is probably going to be the same? I suspect it could be a little bit of both. But she has that body language reaction. And so, like, when I'm working with clients, you know, I watch how their body language is. I watch how tense they are. I watch how rigid they are. And it's, you know, it's very interesting and that's kind of how I get a sense of, you know, when a strong, particularly usually negative feeling comes up, that's when, you know, the closed off body language seems to happen. I mean, you see, she, you know, before she had her hands, you know, on the desk, and now she's kind of, she brings her hands, you know, into her lap, kind of a bit guarding. She does that, you know, the head bow thing. And you can tell that the therapist is kind of, like, he knows what he's doing. He's pushing on that. He keeps kind of trying to draw those feelings out of her. Let's watch some more.
Right.
Would you prefer to be closer to your mother in a perfect world?
Maybe. Like, if I
again, that's another probing question. You know, would you prefer to be closer to her? And so he's trying to analyze, like, okay, well, you know, what's the relationship like? Is there a sense of, you know, potentially, if the answer is yes, potentially there's a sense of anger or resentment, or a sense of loss, or a sense of, you know, that maybe she wasn't good enough for her mother, if she wasn't, you know, close enough with her, or something like that. He's trying to ask these kinds of probing questions. And so I guess what's different from what I do versus what he's doing is he's taking he's not going into this. Like, when clients meet with me directly, they kind of know what the issue is they want to talk about. And so she's just kind of going there with no immediate subject. He's just sort of probing for something, versus the way I will ask questions is I kind of know what I'm trying to hit at, but it's better if the client thinks of it themselves, and I can help push them in the right direction. But so that's kind of different, and so I don't think he knows what he doesn't really know what he's going to find when he asks these questions. And I kind of have some idea when a client comes to me with anxiety or procrastination, I kind of know what their subconscious program is that they're going to be struggling with. If it's procrastination, it's usually fear of failure. They feel like they're not good enough. I mean, it's almost always tied back to that, but it's much better for the client if, when I'm having that conversation with them, I say, you know, if they say the words before I do, you know, I feel like, you know, I'm procrastinating because I have a fear of failure, because I feel like I'm not good enough, like that, or I feel like I don't deserve to get what I want, or something like that. It's better for them to say those language rather than me put words in their mouth. But again, that's me. I kind of know where it's going, versus he doesn't really know, and so I think that's why he's pushing on all these sort of broad personal questions because he doesn't really know what he's going to find yet. And so he's kind of searching for something he can latch onto, and he hasn't really found it. You know, she's kind of intentionally sort of vague about the relationship with her parents. And so he kind of he was, going more and more specific. Now he's narrowed down to specifically her mother and that interaction.
I'm moving home this year, so part of it's just been like me being in England, so I'm not as close with like my family because it's like I'm across the ocean.
Yeah, of course.
So
did something happen between you and your mother? I mean, I understand you want to protect your mother and your family, and I totally respect that. And
again, he's still trying to probe. He's still like, well, what's your relationship like? Well, do you wish you were closer? Did something happen? So again, this is his third follow-up question, asking like what the specific relationship between Pearl and her mom's like.
And I'm just curious about any way that I want to understand your psychology, right? I want to understand what happened to you, and I want to do it.
He also has a very like defensive sort of. Even his body language is a little closed off. I'm not sure if he's trying to present this air of sort of non-threatening. Like, he's asking very personal questions, but it seems like he might be trying to do this in a way that's like, I mean, look at his body language. He's kind of shrugged, he's kind of shrugged up. He's kind of, he takes that long pause with his eyes closed. And I get the sense that he's trying to come across very not, like he's still pushing pretty hard. I mean, again, that's the third question he's asked about the mom, but he's still kind of digging for kind of some sort of feelings or some sort of the actual issues.
Honestly, Pearl, in a good way. Like, I'm not here to like expose you or I just want to understand you, and and I also think that would be an interesting conversation. And I think that you're such a huge public figure now. Like, people are so curious about you, and like you get analyzed all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. And people are speculating. I actually haven't speculated. I haven't thought about it because, I don't know, I just wanted to see what happened when we're across from each other and what I noticed or what I felt. How does that land when I say that? How does that feel?
It's fine.
Again, he's kind of, I mean, I think it's amusing because, again, I think there's going to be this theme of like trying to pull her more into her feelings rather than thinking about that. And so I think that's why he keeps going back to those, like, what do you think, how do you feel about you not being close to your mom? Or how do you feel about, that you live across the ocean, from them? And so he keeps trying to poke and prod at the feeling questions rather than the thinking that she kind of keeps reverting back to.
All right.
All right. You're not close with your mother. Is there a reason?
That's the fourth time he's asked that question, if I'm keeping track correctly. Because he asked that. He's like, did something happen? Is there a reason? Because, yeah. So he hasn't let up on this question. He hasn't let up on this yet.
She's just very like type A, I guess. So she's very organized, and I'm very like da-da-da,
Uh-huh.
So I just think sometimes like those two personalities kind of like clash,
Did you feel disapproval from her because of the way you were?
Well, I mean, she was annoyed.
She was annoyed by you?
Yeah, well, because I was messy,
Uh-huh.
But no, not like super crazy,
Yeah.
But yeah.
You didn't. Something got missed.
Yeah, I just think.
Let's keep going.
Like, I don't know. Have you ever had like a messy person live in with like a super org? It just doesn't. Just there's clashing.
Yeah.
Mom, I forgot my bag at home.
And that would annoy her?
Yeah, it would.
And what would she say? Would she scold you?
Yeah, but then she'd get it. Or send the nanny or whoever.
Dude, I can just feel like you must have been a precocious child.
What do you mean, a precocious?
Like, well, you're smart, sassy, kind of. All children are manipulative.
Okay.
They want to get what they want, and they
Yeah.
have all kinds of tactics to do that. And I have a feeling that you were probably really good at it. How could you not be? You're really good at arguing.
I mean, I was just really into sports. Like, that's when
Again, so what he's probing for, I'll go solo for the first time here. So what he's probing for here is he's trying to probe for conflict. So if Pearl is naturally, he said her mother is type A, very orderly, very organized, and if Pearl is the opposite, he's analyzing for what kind of tension that created. And so, I've worked with clients who, when they were young, their mother or father was super, like, everything's got it, I'll just take the extreme example of, like, working with clients who had, like, hoarders. I think one of them had a hoarder for a father. And, about hoarders, they need everything to be super organized, and if you move anything, that's, you can't move anything, and everything's got to be their way, and it's very rigid. And so, and if you have a child who's sort of the opposite, who doesn't prioritize those things, you're going to start clashing. And so the child that maybe is perhaps more disorganized than the hoarder parent would like ends up learning to suppress themselves a lot more and becomes overly conscientious of being organized because they don't receive their parents' approval, for doing those things. And so, or, they generally feel like they're not good enough if they're not perfectly organized all the time. And so he's sort of probing for those kinds of beliefs. He's trying to probe for that kind of friction between Pearl and her mom. And so, like, and I think the reason he's doing that is because I think she was trying to be diplomatic by saying, well, we have different personality types, and, those sometimes clash. And so I think David picked up on that, and he's like, okay, well, that's a very nice way of saying we don't get along. That's a very diplomatic way of describing a relationship between two people who have conflicting values, especially a parent-child. And so, she may not want to criticize that relationship too much. Maybe she doesn't want to expose it on the podcast. Maybe she doesn't want to talk. Maybe was raised that way. I think I remember saying that they were raised Catholic or something. I could be wrong, but I think she said they were raised in a religious household. And so maybe there's some judgment about disagreeing with your parents around there. If it's not, but to be really clear, I might be getting that wrong about Pearl, but I've certainly seen that in other clients that were raised by religious people. So I know that is a thing. But yeah, I think it's mainly about he's trying to get to those, again, where I would kind of go with this is like those subconscious beliefs, those root subconscious behaviors. And so she's trying to kind of give excuses a little bit. She's kind of say, well, she's kind of giving, I don't say benign examples, but sort of examples that I think most parent-child have probably had. There's probably been experiences where the child has left something at home and the parent has to go get it. I don't feel like that's a very extreme example. I feel like that happens to almost all. If you've ever had a kid, that you know what that's like, and so it's not. He's trying to more analyze like the reactions to that rather, and so she's kind of giving a benign example, but I think he suspects that there's sort of deeper issues connected with that, and so that's why he kind of hasn't let her off the hook here, is because he's still trying to probe a little bit further. All right.
I think in my childhood, I just think of sports.
But what do you think about what I just said?
Like I was manipulating them.
Not all children manipulate to get what they want. They don't have any other tactic. What did you want but you didn't get as a child, do you think?
Oh, that
I don't
was
know,
a good
'cause-
question.
How do you think?
Childhood, I just think of sports.
But what do you think about what I just said?
Like I was manipulating them.
Not all children manipulate to get what they want. They don't have any other tactic. What did you want but you didn't get as a child, do you think?
And so he sort of acts. That question is a lot more potent. Like he could have opened with that. What did you want and not get? As I'm gonna go solo again. It's like what? I'm gonna go solo for this. So it's like, what did you want and not get as a child? Like that's a very, very like he's sort of taken the subtlety out. Like he kept trying to kind of walk her towards it a little bit, but it seems to me like it's like that's such a direct, like, what are your negative subconscious beliefs? It's like I feel like that question, it's like, what did you not get as a child, is almost as directly blunt as me asking somebody, so what are your maladaptive subconscious limiting beliefs? It's kind of along those same lines. I guess it fits here because I think that she just hasn't been asked. She hasn't really been answering the questions, or at least been providing the answers or information that would give him something to work on from a therapy standpoint. And so he just has decided to just be super blunt. He's like, well, what did you not get? And so, and any of the, the big five, shout out Ryan Fowler, subconscious programs is basically what he's probing for. If you didn't get enough attention and love, maybe you feel like you're not good enough for other people. If you didn't have enough money or resources in the house, maybe you feel like you're not worthy of getting resources. It's like, if you didn't get enough attention, maybe you're also angry and resentful for that fact. If, mom or dad wasn't around as much. If you didn't feel like you were, if you feel like the house was super chaotic, maybe you didn't feel safe. Maybe the subconscious belief is you don't feel safe particularly. And so he's just probing for that directly at this point. He's just kind of using a blunt instrument and just kind of going for it. So let's see what her reaction is.
I don't know, because my parents were so supportive in like what I wanted to do. So like if I wanted to play drums.
And she's kind of deflecting this question. So her first is, what did you really want? And she's like, I don't know, because my parents were supportive. So, and that might really be the case, but that doesn't mean that there's something that she really wanted. But, and she might not be aware of really the question she's asking. When I would ask these kind of questions to clients, it's very, and they gave me that kind of response. My default reaction was like, well, what was the issue? She's like, well, it wasn't that bad because X, Y, and Z, and other people had it worse. I'm like, no, it doesn't matter if other people had it worse. It doesn't matter that, you're daring, you're defending, excusing, explaining, rationalizing why something negative happened to you. And so, and I'm saying something negative happened to her, but I'm noticing the patterns between how she's reacting and some of my clients have reacted. So rather than say something that she actually wanted, like I didn't get enough attention, affection, love, commitment, support from parents or certain members of my family. You know, she kind of pivots the question around to, okay, well, you know, it was pretty good. And, you know, I was just in sports. I did this, you know.
They bought me a drum set.
Yeah.
Sorry, Mom and Dad, that didn't pan out. I don't play drums. But yeah, I mean, I would like, trying to think, what did I get that I didn't?
What did you need from them?
I mean, they traveled a lot. So, and I
Again, it's just a different way of rephrasing the same question. What did you not get that you wanted? And so, not get, I think she was interpreting that as literally like what possess. I mean, it could be that like you literally didn't get enough, I don't know, toys or gifts or something. Like you didn't get enough, I don't know, financial support or money or whatever. But she's treating it like an object. And he changed that. I think he caught that she was getting caught up on that word get, like an object, and changed that word to need. And so again, he's trying to still point her at her feelings rather than the things and the thoughts and the things around it. And I mean, like, she's analyzing more than feeling. She's not analyzing her feelings. She's still kind of using that thinking part of her brain a bit. Yeah, let's keep going.
I was one of like 10 siblings, so maybe like sometimes I wanted them like home more.
Oh.
But it's kind of hard to even say that because I was gone all the time. I did travel volleyball from the time I was like 12.
Right.
And so I did like 2 sports right out of school. So I would do like 2 hours of basketball, 2 hours of volleyball, drive an hour, go home.
Mm-hmm. Right. Okay.
Yeah.
But you weren't home a lot, but it doesn't mean that you still didn't want them home more.
Yeah.
You wanted them more attention, more.
Yeah, maybe.
I mean, 9 kids.
Yeah.
I know you grew up with 6.
Yeah, it's kind of confusing, but yeah.
Yeah, I remember.
Second to 6.
Yeah, second is.
Notice her kind of the way she says yeah. The first time was more, yeah, that's the case. That kind of tone. And then she kind of raises the pitch of her voice and she goes, yeah. She kind of, it looks like she subtly switches between describing how she actually feels and then like her podcast persona. I just want to point that out.
6, and so all the kids that must have been competing for attention to some degree.
Yeah, probably. But I guess the way it was in my family, like everyone just wanted to be like good at stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So
why good at stuff? Was that important? Was that a value?
Yeah.
Championed by who?
My dad.
Really?
My mom too, but my dad, like, I don't know. He was just very, because we grew up pretty like well off, or at least maybe upper middle class, early childhood. They got their business like took off when I was a little bit older, but
took off. Like how rich were they? How wealthy did they get?
Well, I don't know. Like they did pretty well.
Pretty well.
And enough to have like a nanny. Like I did travel volleyball,
right?
That sort of thing.
Not a private jet, but everything you need.
Oh God, no.
Right,
no,
right.
That's like a different level.
Right, but enough money.
Yeah, but my dad was just very much like no handouts for you guys. If you're not working a job, you're in a sport. If you're not in a sport, you're in music. Like you are doing something. And so every single person in my family is just very like high achievers, I guess,
Mm-hmm.
or like. Like I have a sister that's going to be a pilot. My brothers are engineers.
And that's not necessarily a bad thing. Again, a lot of this comes down to like the interpretation of like how she interpreted her father's actions. And so if she felt like her father's love and affection and attention were predicated solely off of her achieving things, or same with her siblings. If any of the siblings kind of figured out that, dad doesn't pay attention unless we are doing something, then, that would create, self-esteem issues. That would be like, I'm not good enough unless I'm doing something. I've worked with plenty of clients that feel is like that. I've asked them that question directly. It's like, do you feel like you have to be doing something to feel like you're good enough? And oftentimes that'll be kind of the revelation they have. It's like, yeah, I only feel good enough when I'm doing something. So I'm not saying that that's necessarily the maladaptive subconscious program that she has, but at least not yet. I haven't watched the rest of this video. But it's up to whether or not her interpretation is me getting love from my dad contingent upon me doing something well. Because I think that it's fine to have standards for your kids. I don't have a problem with I don't have a problem with parents encouraging their children to become active in things and having standards for them, to have a job, to be in this. Like, I think that's all fine. It's more, does she think that, or do any of her, did they get the interpretation that you're only worthy of love or support or being part of this family if you do these things? And I don't know. She hasn't given me enough details for this, but that's what and again, so this is part of this breakdown I'm doing here is kind of analyzing what's going through my head as I watch this kind of content. And so that's, all the triggers that go off. It's like, okay, well, it could be this, could be this, could be this. And I think that's largely what's going through David's head as well when he's talking to Pearl, is he's kind of watching for these, like, well, was there an expectation to be good? How, he's kind of probing, like, do you have that kind of I don't think he would use those words, subconscious programs, but that's basically what he's probing for. He's trying to see, does she tie her self-worth to her accomplishments and interactions? So.
Engineers, so everyone's just really hardworking, I guess. Yeah, and then we would do we would travel in the summer, and I never understood what it was like to go on vacation and relax. I was like, what, you guys go to the beach? Like, we hiked 10,000 feet when I was 18. My sister was 10 years younger than me. And so, like, on vacation, it was like, no, you're not going to the city, relaxing. We were going to go, we climbed Devil's Tower.
Uh-huh.
We would never fly. We'd always drive. My dad was like, we are not getting plane tickets. That's
wow.
too expensive. So
was the message, you must be an achiever or you won't get love? Like,
not love.
So he just kind of puts it out there. That's what I basically said. I don't know if I mean, everyone has their own styles. I'm not sure if... See, there's different approaches. One of them is... let me go solo for this again. I'm definitely going to have to do a part 2 of this. I didn't realize how far I'd get. I don't think that... when I'm talking to a client, and it matters a lot less if they can explicitly remember how they felt. Most people don't come to me because... some do. But most people tend to not come to me and they says, well, you know what, Jordan? When I was a kid, I felt like my accomplishments were tied to getting love from my parents. And so I didn't have, if I never accomplished anything, or I didn't get straight A's, or I didn't make, do all this great stuff, I wouldn't get attention. Like clients typically don't say that themselves. At least not at first. And it's, sometimes they do, but I don't think, I'm not sure if that's the best approach for what she's talking about, because that's a very personal question. It's like you're asking somebody a deeply personal question about, like, their experience and like part of their deepest, darkest parts of their brain. Like, do I really expect her to admit that on camera? That is like, I didn't have approval. Like some will. I mean, we've heard Alex Hormozy talk about it. But I just don't think it's better to walk the client towards that rather than just come out and say it. I just wouldn't take that approach. And so it's not a bad question, but I feel like it's so direct that I wonder if you'd actually get an honest answer. Because what Pearl has been doing is she has a tendency to sort of deflect and then bring up a positive example is kind of what she's done a lot of. Or not necessarily positive, but just a sort of benign or neutral example. And so again, this is part of the reason I think that you can't really force people to go to therapy. And I'm starting to think that this is maybe more content than it is actual therapy. And of course it is. But you can't, people have to be curious about them. I think it's better to work with someone who's already curious about these things. And so if you're kind of doing it as a stunt, Pearl goes to therapy, ! Is the title of this video. It's like, okay, but I don't know how realistic it really is. I don't know how much she's actually going to be. I mean, we're only 13 minutes into the video, so I don't know how much she's actually going to end up sharing. But that's a very personal question to just be like, did you not feel like were those tied together? Yeah, I'm trying to think how I would frame that in a different way. I think I would just more ask generally, what do you think about that? It's or just, again, maybe not use the word think, but you're trying to, again, it's more powerful if she comes to the answer herself, I think. But let's keep going.
But I mean, he just wouldn't be happy, But
who wouldn't be happy?
Probably my dad, but I loved it, to be honest.
Was there a demand on you? Did you feel a demand, like an expectation, like you had to live up to something?
Yeah, but I liked it.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was I don't know. I loved the feeling of working really hard at something and getting better. So I was I was 12 when I started travel volleyball. I was on the worst team, and my dad would always say, just work hard and you can work your way up. And by the time I was 18, I was on the third team. I was a bench warmer. And by the time I was 18, I was on the ones team, and I was starting.
Yeah.
And so that's it's just kind of a value that he instilled in us.
Yeah.
Was, he would always tell me that if he had two employees, if he had one that was talented and one that was hardworking, he would take the hardworking one. Because he would tell me early in life, the talented people are going to win, but in the long run, you're going to see who worked hard.
Right.
So
you work hard.
Yeah.
Yeah. All the time. I mean, you seem everywhere all the time. I can't. It's astonishing how much you tweet. I mean, you're kind of like Cernovich level.
Oh, I know. I love tweeting. It's the best job ever. I'm all I have to do is tweet. This is amazing.
She didn't really answer the question. So, it might not be okay, I'll go solo for this again. It's he asked, do you feel like if you didn't achieve things that he wasn't going to give you love? She kind of didn't answer that question. She didn't say yes. She didn't really say clearly yes or no. She just gave an example. Again, she kind of deflected and gave an example. She's like, he's like, well, if you work hard and, you were in the lower tier volleyball team, I'm not C team, I don't know how volleyball works, but, she worked her way up to being the varsity team. I don't know. She got better at volleyball. She worked her way up through the ranks. But again, she kind of just described that story as she did the things that her father described were possible, but she didn't really explain. And she said she liked that process. She's like, I liked that I was able to work hard and achieve something good. But that doesn't really answer his question, because I think many of us, well, I shouldn't say that. I should say more like she's describing the process of what happened, but he's asking more, did you feel like you had to do that in order to get his love? And she's like, well, I liked the process of feeling good. Like you see that they're kind of not, she keeps not answering the question. He keeps moving towards a feeling question. She goes to like, well, these are examples. This is what he did. And so here's what a better answer from her would have been. Is like, I really felt like no matter what I did, he would love me just the same. That his love was entirely not tied to my accomplishments, but he didn't, and he still encouraged me to do my best and work hard. It's like that's kind of the opposite is I only got love from my father when I worked hard and achieved. He's looking for one of those things, but she's not really giving either of them. It's possible she's not giving either of them because it's just not true. Maybe she's, maybe she really doesn't. Maybe she doesn't. Maybe that really wasn't the case. Maybe her dad was just objective, and she really felt that love and really respected him, and they had a great relationship, and she really felt unconditionally supported. I think, and it's also possible that I think that word unconditional support, might be more of a therapy term. So if you grew up around unconditional support, you didn't really know you have it, and so it's more hard to describe it. Like you're not really aware of what it's like to be around. You're not really aware of what it's like to not have that. And so if you have a good enough relationship, maybe that's why she's struggling with answering the question, is because she doesn't really know what that means. And so she's giving examples of what she thinks is answering the question, but really it's like, so the answer's kind of bare. The fact that she answered the way she did, maybe in her mind sort of implies that love was not conditional on accomplishments. So that could be the case as well. Whoops.
But you just let the thoughts roll. Do you think about it, or are you just rolling them out?
I just roll.
You just roll.
Yeah. Because,
and let the chips fall where they may?
Yeah.
And do you ever go like,
Yeah, sometimes.
But you live with it.
Yeah, sometimes I'm like, yeah, I probably could have worded that better, but
right.
It's fine. But I don't understand. People get so mad, and I'm like, why are you guys mad? It's just words.
Right. Well, you know why they get mad.
No, I don't.
You don't?
No, because it's like, they're just words.
Well,
like, how are you as an adult? Like oh my gosh, they're so crazy. I'm like, you as an adult are getting mad about words.
Well, you're attacking sacred cows for them, like things that they hold dearly. And I'm not there. As I said, I generally agree with you, and I think a lot of those beliefs are illusions. Nevertheless, they're very attached to them, and so of course they're going to have a reaction to that.
Yeah, but so what? Why do you have to freak out?
Yeah.
Chill out.
But if they chilled out, you wouldn't have a career.
Well, no, I think I would, because my first videos, the girls were super chill. That was actually what made it really fun. Was I would do a show and I would say, the pay gap doesn't exist, and the girls are like, huh? And I'd say, hey, come back after the show. Let's do a 3-hour reaction. I'm going to explain to you really slowly why this is true. And people loved watching girls' opinions slowly changing.
Yeah.
It wasn't even combative. It was just me look at this.
Yeah, that's when I first saw you. It was really good and interesting.
Fun, yeah.
It was fun. So it started you educating women, feminists, I guess, about some of the illusions.
I'm speeding up just on the parts that I think are less relevant to her psyche, because I think those are I think it's important to have this as the background to what they've been talking about, but it's not as I'm probably only going to slow it down when he asks a question that's more directed at more of a therapy question.
Of feminism, because those illusions are actually causing them harm.
They called me the tour guide of the Jordan Peterson, Kathy Newman debate. I did that one so many times.
Right. You mean you'd walk them through it, you'd watch it, and you'd explain to them what was going on and why?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. So, that's why I'm like, I think even if they weren't triggered, I think I could still do it in a non-combative way.
Right.
I actually sometimes I don't even really.
You must enjoy. It's fun. You like arguing.
No, not really.
Really?
I don't like.
You like conversation.
Yeah, I like
you
conversation.
get. This is the analysis that I had. Listen to Michael Knowles. That you get connection through conversation.
Yeah.
Like you like the feeling of connection. You probably flirt through conversation and even a little bit of argument.
Yeah, I don't prefer it when it's super combative. I don't really like it. I don't.
Who's come at you hard in a way that was uncomfortable and you felt unfair?
H3 for sure.
H3, yeah. Well, he's an asshole.
Yeah, I know. Pierce Morgan, we're cool now, but he did ambush me one time. I didn't appreciate that.
I don't understand his style. He did that to Tate. I'm like, why are you cutting off, super direct? It's like a challenge. I don't get it.
Most of the time he's been fine. Mostly it's just like super combative women like on shows. Like I had one chick start.
But you can slay those chicks, can't you?
I mean, yeah, but I don't really like. I was just on Fresh and Fit like a week ago. That's why I stopped doing the shows, is I didn't like how combative it was. I don't enjoy having to like tell girls to shut the fuck up because you've been talking for 20 minutes and you haven't been letting anyone else talk. Like I don't enjoy that. And I was just on Fresh and Fit, and it was like these girls start punching each other. Yeah, they got into a literal fist fight. I'm like,
Just Jerry Springer style.
Yeah, and I didn't like it. I like talking to people that like actually want to figure out what's true. And when I feel like it's becoming like an insult off, or it's like you have an agenda for your cause, or you're trying to recruit me to your religion, like that's when.
All right, I'm gonna make it go even faster. This isn't really relevant. I mean, the one thing he said there was he was asking, like, do you like that connection between? That was the only thing I caught that was like, that's a bit of a therapy question, but a little bit.
When I get frustrated because it's not about, like, what is true. And I've always been, like, a super curious person. Just really curious.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of where it all started for me, was, like, curiosity. Why don't men want to get married anymore? Why are they saying dating is so bad? Like, I've never heard this content. This is so interesting.
Yeah.
And then I interviewed 1,000 women. I interviewed men that got effed up in divorce, and I'm like, oh, I see what they're talking about now.
People like talking to you.
Sometimes. Some people don't, but yeah, some people.
No, some people don't. But even the people who don't kind of like talking to you because it's something.
Yeah.
It's something. Maybe that's your gift. I mean, it's enjoyable to talk to you because you're straightforward and you're honest and you're transparent and you say what you think. But you're not hard.
Yeah.
Like I don't feel a demand like that I get it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I love talking to people. So yeah, it's fun.
You love talking to people.
But not.
Why?
I've just always been really curious, and I love pointing out like behavior patterns. And I'm sure you probably like this too.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So it's really interesting. Like even with family court.
That makes two of us.
Like I felt like I figured out why society's all messed up. Like I was like, oh, this is why everything's going on.
Right. Women. Well, I think there's something to that. I mean, I could take the other side, but let's, and I will. You know what I mean? Like, because I think men do bear some responsibility. But your general message is, well, what I heard on the Michael Knowles podcast, I've heard you say in other places, is that women, they don't take responsibility for their choices.
Well, why would they?
Right, because they get bailed out.
Yeah,
they're not held accountable.
Yeah, well, and even like we don't even pay.
You're one of them.
No, not me. Sorry, guys. Not me. But.
Well, how is that? Your side, your sex, your gender is in your mind are the bad guys.
I wouldn't say the bad guys.
But the response
have over his wife. How can he enforce it? I want to leave. Okay, please don't. What is he? I want to rob you and steal your kids. Please don't. What is he?
He let his wife.
Yeah, I'm skipping ahead because they're more talking about general red pill concepts, so it's not as important to my discussion here.
Train jujitsu with another man. He should have not said. He should have.
I mean, I guess half of billionaires are divorced. So if you think you're smarter than a billionaire, then luck.
I do think. I'm not smarter, but I think I understand something about male-female dynamic. I think men need to take responsibility for their lack of.
Let's play it out.
Let's play it out. Yeah, let's role play.
Baby, I want to train jujitsu.
And I'm gonna fucking give him the fucking business, and I'm gonna keep him in check.
Okay. Yeah, let's go with this. Yeah. I say, all right, not the jujitsu. I want to go next. Yeah. Why would she marry Tom Brady? And
that false promise, probably. What you said.
Why would you marry Tom Brady
in that situation? And I think there is a way, just as if a man is fucking around.
Or I don't know what it is. He can't watch her 24/7. If it wasn't him, when a woman wants to do the wrong, please don't cheat. Want to watch?
A woman is not going to cheat on a man that she respects.
No, I wouldn't cheat. But I think it would be better. Well, when you say yes,
you do believe in that. Yes. Yeah. So if you were the leader, right? If you're the leader of your corporation, man or woman, if things go wrong.
Yeah, this isn't really the last couple minutes of it.
Your corporation. Yes.
The last couple minutes haven't really been anything about therapy. They're just hashing ideas. It's possible.
You have the right.
It's possible that what he's attempting to do here is build some rapport with her so that she feels more comfortable. You know, people talk about the things that they know for a bit. She might feel more comfortable opening up. So that might be his goal. But yeah, let's keep going.
To fire people, and that keeps them in line. No, I'm serious. There has to be some enforcement when you have an authority.
Right.
I don't think that's authority, and that's the problem. Maybe
Brady wasn't fucking her.
maybe, I don't know.
Implying that authority comes from somewhere outside themselves. And what I'm suggesting is the authority must come from within the man.
I've seen a lot of guys that tried. No, not really. My dad was just a busy guy. Like, he was just working. Just watched
within the man.
I've seen a lot of guys that tried. I've met a lot of guys that tried that authority from. I just watched a video today, and the guy was like,
"Did your mom dominate your father?"
No, not really. My dad was just a busy guy. Like, he was just working.
And there he snuck in another personal question. So now, see, and that's why I think he was trying to talk about more general subjects. And now he snuck in that question of, okay, did your mom dominate your father? You know, and that can affect kids' subconscious beliefs, because you have, you know, people that, it's just the way they see different sexes might be different, and so, any number of things. Let's keep going.
Did your dad stand up to her?
I mean, at times I wasn't really involved in their marriage.
Of course not. You see, you're a kid. You see things. You feel the vibe. You get the vibe of things.
When I was a kid, I would say they actually got along better than most of my friends. Mm-hmm. So I would say, like, when I was growing up, I remember even like I had this guy named Anthony I was friends with in high school, and he said it's weird to see parents that get along. I've never seen my parents flirt like yours do.
Oh.
So I don't know. I mean, they weren't like, I'm not trying to say they were perfect. You know, they had like their problems, but I don't really want to go in.
I understand.
But it wasn't. They weren't. I've never really saw them fighting growing up. Like, to be honest.
But dynamic. You can feel the dynamic in a situation. Like my family. Mm-hmm. People would say, "Oh, we live in a patriarchy. You know, male dominated." I was like, I don't know.
It doesn't really matter. I mean, that does help, but again, just because you were like, what matters is her interpretation. And so, just because her parents had a positive relationship doesn't mean that she had necessarily a positive relationship with them. Doesn't necessarily mean that she didn't develop some maladaptive negative subconscious programs through other things or other family members or other things. And so, I mean, he's doing what he should do, is he's probing, he's asking relevant questions, try and find something if anything's there. But it doesn't necessarily mean that, again, she does this thing of like, the reason I suspect there might be something is because she keeps using other people as examples. And she's like, well, my friend came over and she said that, you know, well, it's so weird to see your parents flirting. It's like, yeah. I mean, that's sad for that kid, but notice how she's kind of comparing her experiences like to others, and it sort of I'm not saying she's doing this, but when I've seen other clients do this, it kind of walks down the line of, well, it couldn't have been this bad because XYZ had it worse, or XYZ thought I had it better than they did. It doesn't really matter what other people think. It matters more what you think and what your interpretation is. And again, I'm not making a judgment of what that interpretation is yet, but I just noticed this constant deflection of what her parents were like, and she has to keep using this examples to sort of sell it. And these examples seem a little less aimed at how she feels rather than how other people feels. Or how other people feel.
What the fuck are you talking about?
All right, how long have we been going here? Okay, well, so I've been going for hour 23. Okay, I'm just gonna go solo. So I've been going for an hour, 23 minutes here. I think I'm gonna call it there. I'll probably do a part 2 next week, analyzing. I think, like I said, I think that this kind of stuff is this kinds of breakdowns are important to watch. Just pay attention to, I think the moral of the story is, pay attention to how other people, listen for these subconscious speak terms. I mean, it doesn't have to always be in the context of therapy, but there's a reason why everyone asks about childhood during therapy sessions. And when people talk about their childhoods, notice if they generally speak about them positively or negatively, or don't speak about them at all, or speak about them a lot. Like, notice these things. And that's the kind of things that I'm looking for. And again, the most important thing is not necessarily the events themselves, but the interpretations of the events. I could almost, I think she said she's one of 6 kids. And they all grew up in the same household. I don't know anything about her kids or her siblings. But, it's very possible, it's perfectly possible that one child thinks that, maybe Pearl really thinks that her parents were loving and caring, and maybe another child doesn't think that and thinks they were, just didn't give them enough attention, or that maybe Pearl wasn't particularly bothered by the fact that her parents weren't around that much, but another child was. And so, again, there's really no one-size-fits-all to this. And, different circumstances, different influences. And so, I think that, if you're watching this and you'd like me to help you break down the subconscious programs, this is kind of what I'd go through. If you come to me with an issue, we'd sort of break down, like, when do you feel it? How do you feel it? And I can try and give you some insight on what I think happened in your childhood and how they're related. And that can certainly help the client understand and reconcile, with what happened to them, and then eventually remove those programs. But even if you can't remember exactly what happened to you, that's okay as well. As long as you feel something, if you feel something that's legitimate, then you need to act on it. And that's the one thing I think that I'm most confident on, is like, if you're justifying and if you're trying to use logic and justify around when something isn't right in your head, and you're kind of, well, other people had it worse. Well, other people thought I had it pretty good. Well, I shouldn't complain because this. Well, if you keep like trying to rationalize why you're struggling or suffering, don't. I don't know how else to put that cleanly. Like, feelings are valid. Like, trust your gut, trust your feelings. Your feelings are still valid, and they're worthwhile to explore. Especially, your negative subconscious beliefs. Those can be completely removed. We can completely remove those beliefs and those programs. And so there's no reason to suffer there's no reason to suffer with them just because somebody else might have worse subconscious programs. Every single one of you, everybody, deserves to clean their mind, and so they can live life to whatever matters most to them. It doesn't matter your background. It doesn't really matter what it is. So stay tuned for next week. Actually, next week's Christmas. Probably not going to stream on Christmas. And I haven't decided if I'm doing a New Year's stream. I might end up doing one anyway. Not sure. But either way, thanks for watching. If you're watching on X or on YouTube, I appreciate it. All the usual, leave a like, leave a comment if you liked it. You have any suggestions for content you want me to cover in other weeks? If you want to work with me, my links are in the description. And thanks for watching. Have a good night.